Welcome everyone to the probably 16th episode of Project Uproar. Right now, we've been doing it for a while, and today we got a very special guest, Mayor of Niagara Falls, Jim Diodati.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so today we're hoping to speak to Jim about why he got into politics, as well as other things to do with what motivates him, what inspires him. So I guess the first thing I want to get into, I know you've been around for, this is your second term?
Third year.
Third term, yeah, sorry,
term.
third term.
Yeah.
So why did you, I know you were a city councilor before, why did you decide to get into politics?
Well, it's not like I planned this out. I never ever thought that this was going to be my role in life, to be the mayor. You know, I joke, I say I still don't know what I'm going to be when I grow up. And I've kind of got that playful, childlike approach to everything I do in life. And everything I do in life, I like. And I say to people, if you don't jump out of bed to do what you do, then you shouldn't be doing it. And some people mistakenly chase money. They think, oh, this will be a good way to make money, or I'll make a lot of money if I do this. And it's actually the opposite to be successful. You have to develop yourself. That's the first thing you need to do. And your income will be directly proportionate to the development that you do on yourself, your self-development. And, you know, there's a lot of ways to do that. But the main thing is you just start. And there's not one way to do it. You just start. And today it's a lot easier than it's ever been. You can download podcasts, you can jump on websites, you can go on YouTube. There's so many videos, audios. Matter of fact, I go to the gym every second day and I don't listen to music typically. Once in a while I do, but I'd say 99% of the time I listen to podcasts. And every day it's a different topic. I don't listen to just one. I'll listen to motivation. One day I'll listen to something on nutrition. Another time I'll do some other topic, that exercise, maybe ways to get people more pumped up. Maybe it'll be ways to encourage people to do more, whatever. It doesn't matter. And I believe success leaves clues. You just have to be willing to look around. And a few keys in life that I really live my life, run my businesses, teach my kids. The first thing is failure is not the opposite of success. Mm-hmm. It's a part of success. Definitely. And you cannot be afraid of failure, because the greatest people in the world have failed the most. And the key is every time you fail, you learn a lesson and you do something different. But you can make mistakes, but not the same mistakes. You make different mistakes. Mm-hmm. And that's the key. I ask my kids, what'd you learn today? Or if they screw something up, which I do every day. I screw something up every day. And I joke, I wrote the book on screw up. You know, I had chapters every week. And I ask my kids, okay, all right, so that happened. All right, so what did you learn from it? What would you do different? I said, great, that was a lesson. And that's exactly what life's all about. Making mistakes, learning lessons, doing something different. And I don't care if you look at Thomas Edison, one of the greatest inventors of all time. He made all sorts of screw-ups till he got it right. And that's like everything you do. You try till you get it right. So the key is not to be afraid of failure, not to be concerned about it. Just figure out what the lesson was. Now, having said that, if you make the same mistakes, you're an idiot. So you have to learn. It means you haven't learned. It means life's going to teach you, and it's going to make you fail again and again until you figure this one out. Mm-hmm. So I never ever thought I was going to get into politics. I was an entrepreneur, right? Mm-hmm. During university, during first year university, I started a business, a College Pro Painter franchise here in Niagara. And I always thought I was going to end up in Toronto. I thought I'll get into corporate law, you know, somehow involved in business. I never thought I'd get involved as an entrepreneur, but I just did, and life happened. And what a great experience. And here's why I say it's important to develop yourself. So I had some mentors, and I still have many mentors that give you advice. And there's a saying that we used to use a long time ago, not so much now, leaders are readers, meaning they read good stuff, and they still do. But today there's podcasts, there's so many more ways to develop yourself that you know, it's obviously hard to drive in your car and read a book, but you can drive in your car and listen to a podcast
or an audiobook,
or an audiobook, exactly, and have somebody else read the audiobook to you. There's apps you can download that are summaries of books. You know, one book I enjoyed in particular, Richard Branson, Like a Virgin. And, you know, he started many, many successful businesses, Virgin Airways, you know, Virgin Records, you know, lots of successful businesses. And here's a guy, a grade 10 dropout, who's dyslexic, who's a multi-billionaire. And I had to read that whole book, and it was entertaining, but the two main takeaways I got was customer service and innovation. And if you could be good at those two things, the world's your oyster. So, but by me reading this, I'm even consciously or subconsciously growing and developing and learning. And so back to where I was going with this in the beginning, I say, don't chase money, work on yourself and do what you love. Because if you do what you love, you'll love what you do. And if you do, in fact, love what you do, you'll become good at it because you'll be passionate about it. And because you're good at it, because you're passionate about it, you'll want to do it more. And the more you do it, the better you'll become. And before you'll know it, you'll be doing such a great job that people will be paying you for your expertise of what you do, regardless of what it is. There are experts doing everything that you could imagine in every industry possible. Some people say, well, I got to get into the tech sector. I should be into entertainment. It doesn't matter what you do. There's people making boatloads of money in every industry. And the key is, how far are you going to develop yourself? And you will be well compensated for what you do if you're good at it. You will be good at it if you like it. And you'll be very good at it if you develop yourself. And a lot of the time, people, they don't realize once you start to develop yourself, you try to put that back, like putting toothpaste back in the tube. You can't do it. You grow, and sometimes it's unconscious. You don't even realize how much you've grown. And I tell people the other thing is avoid negativity and negative people. And it's okay. Oftentimes they're your parent or a spouse or a good friend. And they don't even mean to be negative. Oftentimes they start the sentence off with, I don't mean to be negative. And that's typically what they say right before they make a negative comment. And you have to understand, oftentimes it's well-meaning, but simply uninformed advice. They're giving you the view from where they're standing or where they're sitting. And sometimes it's good and sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes it's absolutely useless and counterproductive. So you need to be able to discern between good advice and negative advice. Something I say often is some people are so negative, they would develop in a dark room. And the funny thing about that is nowadays, when I go into the schools and use that, they say, what's a dark room? And I say, well, that's where they develop film. And they say, oh, what's film? I say, you know what? Ever since things have become digitized, we don't use those kind of words. But the point is, someone is always going to give you the gray cloud around that silver lining. You got to focus on where you're going and know there's going to be negative things coming your way, and not to let it take the wind out of your sails. You keep going forward. So I hit a point in my life, I had sold my last business. I was on city council, and I realized when I was at university, I didn't plan to come back because it didn't seem like there was opportunity for me. And I thought, if we could make Niagara Falls better where there was opportunity, maybe people would want to come back. And then when I had kids, I thought, well, why would they want to come back? And I realized I got to do a SWOT analysis for the city of Niagara Falls: strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, and be brutally honest with what's right and what's wrong, and then come up with a plan to fix what's wrong and to enhance what's right. And I did just that. And when I decided I was going to run for mayor, but I thought I'm going to put a 10-year business plan together. I had some people say, well, you're arrogant because you think you're going to be around for 10 years. And I said, no, see, that's the problem with politicians and why a lot of people don't like or trust politicians, because all they do is they only worry about getting reelected. And that's why they put 3- and 4-year business plans together. But you go in the business world and they do longer term planning.
Exactly.
So I did that, put the plan together, and I said to the people that said that was arrogant, I said, this is my gift to the city. And it's a roadmap to success. Whether it's me or someone else that wins this election, I said, I will leave this behind. Put a lot of work into it with a lot of smart people, did a lot of research. This is my gift to the city. And as it turned out, and I said, of course, I'd like to be the one to implement it. Well, I was, and I was successful. And I'm happy to say we're 9 years into our 10-year business plan, and we almost have every single box checked. And some of them were quite grandiose. Things like the GO train coming to Niagara Falls, and Metrolink said it's not even on our 10-year radar. And we did it in a very short order. It's a long story. That's a whole other podcast. But we did it. The point was we did it. And I tell people, you got to do your homework. You got to plan your goals, and then you implement them. Do your homework so that you know this is where you want to be. Like they say, plan your work, then work your plan. And then you have to be unrelenting, and you have to be so laser focused that this is what you're going to do, that somebody with a negative comment is not going to knock you off your perch. And I said that to the Minister of Transportation when he said, you're not even on the 10-year visioning plan. We are not considering this in any way. And I said, well, Minister, with all due respect, I'm too stupid to stop. And I said, until you put a shovel in the ground, I won't stop. And so I'm thinking, looking back, him and his senior staff and bureaucrats all looked at each other. What do you say when someone just admits they're too stupid to stop? Not much to say, And it's funny, I got the picture of him and I making the announcement, that it was, and then the most recent provincial government moved it ahead by 4 years. And I'm happy to say it's already profitable and there's massive expansion, and that is going to change the face of the region. So the thing that I'm excited about when I go to all the convocations and all the commencements, I say to the graduating students, go get your education, go travel, get your life skills and experience, and then come back, because we're going to need you. There's going to be great jobs waiting for you. And especially, you might not be able to afford to buy a house in Toronto, but you can live in Niagara and take the GO train every day to Toronto. So you can still have the pride of ownership and yet be able to access those great jobs in the GTHA. So that's kind of how it came to be. And so now, like I say, 9 years in, and we've traveled all over the world. I've met with all sorts of very, very successful people, and I pitched them on why Niagara Falls is the right place. Something I've always said, Niagara Falls is the Coca-Cola of municipalities, and we've got a brand unparalleled, most famous city in Canada by far. And especially when you travel around the world, you realize, Toronto, it's the center of the economic universe in Canada for sure, without a doubt. But when you get out in the world and you realize which brand is more famous, it's not even close. And it's apples and pineapples. And Niagara Falls is famous. So I thought, how can we rein in that brand so that we can benefit with all the great things that we want to bring to Niagara Falls? And so that's been the plan. And I've been very, very blessed and fortunate that I'm surrounded by an outstanding staff at the city, people who want to be part of something bigger, people that don't want the status quo, people that don't want to do what's always been done, people that know we can make things better. And we just have to go out and do it. And so I've got a supportive council as well, and we're able to do all these great things. So that's kind of how I got to be in this chair. It was never a plan. It just kind of happened. But the only consistent part was I'm constantly working on myself. I'm constantly trying to evolve into a better human being, a better business person, a better everything. And I don't think that job ever stops.
Yes, I love the approach of even being still like a child, right? Approaching everything like you have a lot to learn and developing even as you go on to new frontiers. I'm a big fan of that.
There's a book, actually, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport.
No, but I'll have to get the audiobook.
It's and it's on Audible, yeah. And it's all about that idea of, similar to your situation. I mean, we learned so much, what you just said there about how your business life has come to affect what you do as mayor. Like, there's so many influences there, but it's all about the idea of not necessarily, we're told all the time, like, we have to find our passion, and it's like this thing out there, and if we don't find it, we're a failure. It's the idea of developing mastery and developing the self, and then things will fall into place after that. So it's really cool how I saw ideas in that book resonating in what you just said there. I'm just curious, you talked about lessons in terms of your previous life. What particular life lessons have you learned since becoming mayor? I know it's a very stressful job, and obviously with having social media, there are it's an opportunity for you always probably get voiced different opinions all the time. What specific life lessons have you learned from the position that you occupy now?
So many, but I'd say one of the biggest ones that's been reinforced over and over is networking and building relationships, because we are emotional beings and we make emotional decisions, and we'll later justify them with logic. So emotion is a higher faculty, and it will govern many things. And I'll give you an example. When you go to buy a car, the salesperson throws you the keys and says, "Here, take it for a spin." Of course, and they're getting into your head. They're getting you smelling the leather, listening to that Bose sound system. You're already picturing your arm hanging out the window, thinking, how am I going to look pulling in with this puppy? And they get you emotionally. And later you'll justify it. So the first thing I say is you cannot have enough friends. You cannot have enough contacts. Network as much as you possibly can, and never lose contact. And today it's so much easier with LinkedIn, with all the different social media platforms. It's easy to stay in touch and easy to find people. Where, my gosh, not that long ago, there was no internet. It was very difficult. You had to have it written down. And if your phone number changed, you'd never be able to find the person. It's easy today. So I was just up in Ottawa, and we had a big conference, all the politicians across Ontario, and there was mostly provincial. But it is so nice when you can pick up a phone and speak to a minister or maybe a senior bureaucrat. And nothing beats that relationship approach. Logic is nice and it's wonderful, and IQ is great, but EQ is something people need to realize the importance of. Emotional quotient, not just intelligence quotient, and also PQ, political quotient, understanding the politics of things. And I just recently, and you're always learning. So last year I went back to school and I did my chartered director's course through DeGroote School at McMaster, and got my chartered board of director designation. And we had a lot of high level instructors, unbelievable. I learned so much. For example, they said rarely is the smartest person in the room ever the leader. And I said, well, thank God for that, because I don't know if I've ever been the smartest person in the room, but it's the person that has people skills, that can read the situation, that can tell the person's bored, or they're agitated, or they're eager, or they're ready to agree. Just being able to read the room and read the situation, understanding the importance. So many people come in these great PowerPoints and all the facts laid out and books of arguments and whatnot, and they don't realize sometimes it's just something as simple as saying, how was your morning? Or who's the golfer in your family? I see the golf club, or who fishes, or you do yoga, or who meditates, or seeing a book on the desk, or picking up on something completely irrelevant to why you're there, yet you realize how important it is. And it's not the obvious things. It's like, how do I make this bookcase spin? And you realize, you got to tip a book forward, right? You're looking for the big on-off switch, and that's not how it is. The other thing I'd say, there's not just one right and one wrong. It's effective and ineffective. There could be 100 ways to do something. If I told you to bang in that nail, a hammer would be the most logical, simple way. You'd probably use a brick. You'd probably use the back of a screwdriver. You'd probably use your shoe. There's a lot of ways to get things done. Plato had a great quote from a long time ago, and it said something to this effect, that necessity is the mother of invention. If you need to come up with a way, you will come up with a way when it's necessary. And you'll realize, and one of the main things I said to my family, I said, when I went to university, what did you learn? So my mom still makes fun of me because I'm a terrible speller. And she said, what did you learn in university? I said, well, I definitely did not learn to spell. And some people are just good spellers, I find. I'm just not one of them. I said, but what I learned was how to learn. So you could drop me in the middle of anywhere and I can figure things out. I can go to a library, I can go to a computer terminal, I can go to and that's what people need to do. You can become an expert at anything if you want to do the homework. And no, hard work is part of being successful. You can't be afraid of hard work. And that's why I go back to, if you like what you do, it won't seem like work. And I would tell you right now, if I won the Lotto Max Super Lottery, I'd do this job for free for a little bit longer until they chase me out of here with pitchforks and torches, which might be sooner than later. But regardless, I love what I do, so it's never work. And I don't mind putting in crazy hours. I got in late last night. I was at a conference first thing this morning. Doesn't bother. I love it because it's what I love to do. And the fact I get to be paid for what I love to do is amazing. So I'm not even sure if so the skills that develop, so definitely continually developing yourself, definitely networking like crazy. You can never have enough friends, enough contacts, and realizing people are emotional. Don't go in always worrying just about the facts. Facts are nice and facts are important, but if you really want to be successful, you take an emotional approach. Tell a story. There's a saying that facts tell, but stories sell. So I like to always start off with, I want to tell you a little story. And I tell you a story, and I'll tell you something. When you tell someone that way, when you present it that way, they gather around like a little kid. Oh yeah, everyone likes to hear a good story with a neat ending to it. And I talk in stories. I'm like an elder in an old village, when I tell stories. My kids like, oh, not that one again. But the neat thing is they'll always remember the lesson from the story. And why? Because we're emotional. So I think if you can focus on those simple things, and one other thing I'll throw in there, don't always do what you've always done. try to break things up a little bit. And I'll give you an example. You know, typically we always put our pants on the same way. It might always be your left leg, then your right leg. You'll always shave. You start on one side of your face and go to the other side, or brush your teeth from one side to the other. You comb your hair. We're very habitual. Try to break it up once in a while. Do something different. If you like to sleep in, get up really early one morning and go and read outside. Do something totally different. Listen, if at night normally you watch Space Channel, that night go read something or listen to a podcast or download an audiobook. Try to not be so routine and regimented. Try to break it up a little bit, just so that sometimes different input means different outputs. Sometimes it's fun to see how you can play a little bit within your own daily life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talk on this podcast a lot about the importance of putting yourself through something that's uncomfortable or going through discomfort, because without that, there's no growth. You need that. And I think those small examples, even though they may be kind of, getting up a little bit early, they may be a little minute, they could have definitely long-lasting benefits. They could have a domino effect.
They get you out of autopilot, right?
Yes.
Which is the thing like we tend to go into if we're not careful.
And yeah, how's the family? How like
How are you doing? Good.
Yeah. Those are the absolute worst things to say. They're so disingenuous and insincere most of the time. Some people genuinely want to know how you feel. They go, "How are you?" And then you go, "Oh, actually, my leg's been kind of aching, and my eye is really burning." I'm not. They didn't really mean that. They just meant hi, and they didn't really care to find out how you were. And but if try this, there's a real neat psychological study that was done a long time ago, and it was on an airplane, and they're flying from New York to Los Angeles. And the role of the person on the plane was to ask the other person beside them questions the entire time. So they're perfect strangers, just to ask the whole time, "Oh, so where are you from? What do you do? How long you been doing that? Oh, that sounds exciting. Yeah, you must really enjoy that. Do you have any kids?" And just constantly asking them questions the entire time, because most people's favorite topic is themselves, and their favorite sound is their own name being called. So knowing that, it's actually not that hard to get somebody interested in the discussion. So at the end of the flight, when they landed in Los Angeles, they interviewed the person that was being asked the questions, and they asked them, what did they think of the person that they were sitting with? And that was the person asking the questions. And obviously you can't do it in a way that's so obvious. You have to do it subtle. And they said, "What did you think of that person?" And the majority of the time, they described them as the most interesting person they had ever met. They didn't know anything about them. They talked about themselves the whole time, their favorite topic. So try that sometime. When you go home tonight, your roommate, your buddy, whoever, see how long you can go asking them questions about themselves. And I'll tell you, your friends will light up like a Christmas tree. They'll go, "What is going on?" And they'll feel so good about themselves because they're talking about their favorite topic the whole time. And how did hockey go? Did you score any goals? Did you go afterwards? How was that? And just keep asking them questions. It's a fun little psychological exercise in human. And that's what we are. We're humans living in a human world. So if you can do something like, there's just a little tidbit. I just sold that one out to you, Ryan. So you and Igor, try that one tonight. Let me know how it worked so far.
Definitely. And I just read How to Win Friends and Influence People like a short while ago. And yeah, anyone who's interested in those kinds of little tips for those kinds of social situations, that's a great one to read, like a classic.
Oh, it is. That's a great one. And that's one I read a long, long time ago.
Yeah, and it's about even actually listening, and not just waiting to respond, right?
Yes.
Which is like, well, what do we do often?
We're waiting for what we want to say next, and we stopped listening to what they're saying at this point. So a good way, and I've learned here, here's something I got to tell you. So whenever I meet someone who's got some great life skills, I ask them, "So sum it up for me." I'm like, "Igor, tell me, sum it up for me. What have you learned? Save me the next few years of life lessons." And I do that all the time. The daycare lady that our kids used to go to, whose kids were already in their 20s, longest serving mayor in Canada, Gordon Krantz, the mayor of Milton. He's actually been serving longer than Hazel McCallion in Mississauga. And Hazel, I was with Hazel as well on the weekend up in Ottawa. But I said to Gordon, I said, "Gord, sum it up for me." We're at a Grey Cup football game. And I said, "Sum it up for me." And he said, "All right." I'll give you 2 bits of advice. And I was like a little kid. I couldn't wait. So this guy, longest serving mayor in Canada. And he said, "The first thing I would say is get in with the youth." visit the schools, because the youth, he goes, all the people voting for me are the grandkids of the original people who were voting for me. I said, wow, that's incredible. Okay, good. He goes, don't just focus on the people today that vote for you. Focus on, that's like having a farm team for hockey or baseball. You know, you have a farm, you're developing talent, and in this case, you're developing supporters. You're staying engaged, staying in touch. So I said, okay, good. He goes, the other one, you know, you ever have it when you have to give bad news to somebody because they're asking you for something, you just can't do it for whatever reason. I said, yeah. He goes, well, so when I sit someone down like that, instead of giving a political answer, I ask them, would you like the truth, or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? He said, they always say, well, no, we want the truth. He goes, so I give them the bad news. He says, then they thank me for being honest. He was an honest politician, finally. And he says, so I give them bad news and they thank me. He goes, sounds crazy, but it works. So the first time I did that in this office, I felt awkward. I thought, oh my God, I just felt like a fish out of water. I said, and I said, you know, do you want the truth, or do you want me to tell you what you want to hear? And they said, oh, no, of course we want the truth. Who's going to say, no, don't tell me the truth. Tell me what I want to hear. So anyway, I told them, and they said, you know, thank you. We really appreciate that. So again, tidbit that I didn't read, I just picked it up, and I wouldn't have picked it up if I hadn't asked for it. And being humble enough to realize I don't care where you are in life. Wayne Gretzky had a coach. Tiger Williams had a coach. We all have coaches. We all need mentors. We don't know everything. And it doesn't matter if it could be a parent, a brother, a sibling, a friend, a barber. I don't care who it is. It could be the custodian. In some way, I look at everybody as superior to me. Every person, I have something to learn. And my goal is to figure out what it is I'm going to learn from you. Mm-hmm. Most people, their ego's in charge. Mm-hmm. And I'll say, as I was younger, I couldn't wait to tell you about me. Mm-hmm. And as I get older, I realize there's a word called edification. When you edify somebody, and it means telling them all the great things about that person. And it's amazing when you can learn to edify and you realize it's not about you, and pass credit along. When they say you're just this and that, and say, well, no, it's actually Igor. He makes me look good. And you know what? And Ryan, he's always there, you know, making sure that I say the right things. And it's by edifying somebody else, you actually get ahead. It's crazy. It seems the opposite of what you should do in life, but it actually is key. And the only way you learn that is by asking. So have mentors. Don't be afraid to utilize them, not just one, and continually ask for advice on life. And it doesn't mean you're going to take every bit, but at least listen to it and process it. And it's not all going to be for you, but some of it will be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting because something we are always interested in thinking about is, especially those who are past their 20s, like what advice would you give? We're about mid-20s, your 25-year-old self. And that's one thing that when I was in university, especially doing my master's, we were taught to kind of build this persona. Like we had to present our research, we had to be this person and always talk about ourselves. So transitioning into the quote unquote real world, that was a bit of a transition myself. Is like, if you talk about yourself all the time, people are going to start going the other way. And
100%. Yeah. 100%. And you realize that as your young self, you're trying to prove yourself. You're trying to say, I'm not a kid anymore. I'm successful. I've got my education. Now I have a successful career, and you know I have a car now. And you want to be a grown up and be seen as a grown. Yeah, and I totally 100% get that and understand that, and that's why the sooner you learn that the when you give away credit, you get it back. What you give away comes back to you in spades. And it's the opposite. You think if you hoard, you'll have more. And it's funny. And you can call it God, you can call it universe, you can call it energy, call it whatever you want to call it. I can tell you there's abundance if you're willing to give it away. It comes back to you, whether it's advice, whether it's a helping hand, whether it's money. I don't care what it is. But you can't be afraid. And credit and praise, give it away freely. It comes back in spades. So don't be afraid to throw the boomerang of praise away and let people feel it. And and be genuine. Don't do it just to be phony, like the how's the family kind of comment. Do it in a genuine, sincere, and accurate way. You don't want to say things that aren't true, but find the good things. And sometimes there's an exercise. You make a list of all the things you like about somebody. And then the other person says, wow, I didn't realize you felt that way. Because when you're younger, you're competitive. I don't know about you guys. I know with my buddies, I wouldn't give them an inch. No. Are you kidding? They just ground me into the, they ground and pound me.
I've been there.
Oh, you've been there, right? And if you say anything positive, like, hey, that's a good looking outfit or whatever, you didn't want to give them the upper hand. Then later you go the opposite way and you realize, wow, it took a while to get to that point where you can get your ego in check. when you realize that's holding you back. And you know, and it's unfortunate, you know, and again, well-meaning but uninformed people that are giving you advice. And remember, someone can only give you advice to get you to where they are. So you have to decide, is that where you want to be? And if they are, then that's great. And if they aren't where you want to be, then you got to find someone that is, and then ask them for advice. So it's kind of like when you're playing a game of Clue. Every step, you're going to pick up another clue from somebody else. And that's life. It's a big game. And trying to navigate through it, have fun, and see how far you can take it. It's exciting.
Curious. I like that analogy of life being this game. There's another book that has inspired us that we actually spoke about in our last podcast. It's called The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And it's all about that idea of when we face obstacles in life, whatever those obstacles are, physical, psychological, economic, we could kind of do one of two things. We could kind of just roll over and be like it's over kind of thing. We have to try something completely new, or it could present an opportunity that we want to embrace that wouldn't have happened if this obstacle didn't occur. So just out of curiosity, how have you been able to persevere through like obstacles in life? Obviously being a business person, you're thrown that obstacle of not having security all the time, right? So how have you been able to persevere through different obstacles in your life?
Well, your why is very, very important, that you always have to determine. So why are you doing this? Some people are doing it because they want to buy their mom a car one day. Some are doing it because they want to take their dad to this country. They want to bring them back. Some are doing it because they always wanted to have a house, a big house and a cottage. Some are doing it because they want to give to charity and they want to help build wells in foreign countries or feed the poor. Whatever what floats your boat, what gets you excited, what gets you jumping out of bed in the morning, that's got to be your reason for doing what you do. And once you know your why, nothing will stop you. And when you're having a bad day, which you will, you're going to have bad days, you're going to have things go wrong, and that's part of life. Like I've heard one of the sayings that said, failure is inevitable, suffering is a choice. So you'll always be focused on where you're going. When you're having that rotten day and nothing's worked out for you, and you don't know why you're doing this, and someone's going to say, do you still want to build that cottage for your mother? Yeah. All right. Well, then stop feeling sorry for yourself and pick yourself up and get back in there. Go for another round. So that's got to be part of it. There's going to be down days, down times, negative things, but it's not always, you can't see it as failure. It's part of the learning process. So like you just mentioned with this book about obstacles, there's obstacles. So if I made up my mind, I'm going to drive to Florida. All right, I'm all set. The car's packed. I got gas. I've got everything I need. Let's go. And as I get down the highway, the road's closed. So what do? I have a choice. I can turn around and go home, or I'll find another road. And so the story goes. And then you hit some bad weather. You have a choice to make again. Get a hotel room and just relax, wait for the storm to pass, or you keep driving or turn around and go home. So each time you come to another decision. And my thinking, sometimes you got to take 2 steps back to jump 4 steps forward. Sometimes you got to plant your feet. You just got to feel it out. And you start, and then I know one thing, when you make a mistake, you'll figure it out real quick. Oh, wow, the storm's really bad. We should have stayed where we were, or going home. You won't feel good about yourself. They say a person on their deathbed never regrets anything they did, but they often regret what they didn't do. And life is short. Take chances. What's the worst thing that's going to happen, and why wouldn't you do it? You should be following your goals and chasing whatever adventure it is that floats your boat. So if I had to go back to my younger self, I think I would tell him earlier, forget the ego, drop the ego. Start giving compliments, start pointing out how people are better or doing a great job. Don't be afraid to say, that looks really nice, or I love that, or I really enjoyed the way you did this, or you did a terrific job. The other thing is, it's about being humble. Always be humble. Forget the pride. Be humble. I can remember my very first job. My boss, I was 15, sent me out into the showroom, handed me a paint scraper and told me, I need you to scrape all the gum off the floor and the stickers. So I thought, oh my gosh, this is how embarrassing. My buddies from high school are going to see me out here, my hands and knees scraping, and I'm a teenager, and I'm thinking, I would just remember how I felt, but I thought, well, I have a choice. I can say no and quit, or I can go do it. So I did it, begrudgingly, I did it. And I could hear this noise behind me, this shh, 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 noise behind me. And I thought, what? I turned around. It was my manager. He was on the floor on his hands and knees scraping beside me. And so two things I want to point out. Number one, that my manager was humble enough to set an example that no job was below him. When I saw that, anything he asked me to do, I would do. Anything he asked me. The second point from this is, I just told you another story with a lesson in it. And you'll remember the story because you have a visual right now of what this guy looked like and me on my hands and knees, right? Scraping on the floor. And so there's two lessons right there. And I mean, there's lessons throughout your day if you're willing to look. Some people are in such a hurry to get to the finish line, they miss out on all the scenery. And life is not a journey. It is truly a destination. And same with success in business. So Ryan, back to your original question, focusing on your why. And for me, I've got 3 kids now. That's become my why. So last year, as you're aware, and maybe your listeners are not aware, I had cancer last year. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and it was a challenging year. But, you know, so when they first broke the news to me, and it's a bit of a long story, that's another podcast, but I said, so my family came in and, you know, we all had a good cry. And then I said, all right, that's it. That's it. What do you mean that's it? I said, that's it. We're done crying. We're done now. We did it. It felt good. It was cathartic. We let it out. We're not going to cry anymore. I said, from here on in, I'm focusing on where I'm going, not where I am. You know, when you drive a car, you hear about rubberneckers, you know, someone that looks, they see an accident and they look and then they rear end the person in front of them because your car will go where you look. So focus on where you want to go because your life will go where you want it to go based on where you focus. So, you know, you've got to be very careful about your goals and what you plan to do because you will achieve them. You want to make sure that you set lofty goals and you want to make sure they're goals that you want them to take you to where you want to be. So in this case, I said, we're not going to focus on my sickness. We're not going to focus on the cancer. We're going to focus on my health and my healing. And that's all we're going to talk about. And one of my brothers, a friend of him, gave me a shirt that said F cancer. And I looked at it and I laughed at first. I get it. And I said, yeah, thank you. I said, but I'm not going to wear this. And he said, well, why not? I said, because I'm not fighting or effing anything. I said, I'm getting better. By wearing this and saying I'm going to fight something, I'm just empowering it. I'm not fighting anything. I'm just getting healthy. So I decided to take a productive and constructive approach to my health and focusing on my kids, saying my kids, they need their father. And I want to be a part of their life. I want to be healthy. And I did things. So I would jump on my trampoline. That was good for the lymphatic system. I started eating better, avoiding sugars and processed foods, started exercising. I started doing things to get me along that path because I like to be healthy and I want to be around for a few years. So I said to my kids, no. I said, I'm gonna spend that inheritance. I'm not leaving it behind for you guys. I said, that $200 is better in my pocket than your pocket. So anyway, the point of it, I guess I'd say, is focusing on where you're going and never letting go of your why. That's why your why has to be emotionally anchored to something that's important to you. It can't just be because I want to be a millionaire. That's not enough. You can't just quantify, you have to qualify it. You have to know why. You got to close your eyes and imagine that cottage. You got to smell the leather in that car. You have to smell the coniferous trees of up north where you're going to be. Whatever the sea, if you want to be near the water, you got to smell the ocean. You've got to have it in your head. And I'll tell you something. If you do that, you will get it. Can I tell you a quick story?
Yeah, definitely.
And so,
we have that.
Okay, good. I used to own a bakery distribution company, and I distributed sweet goods to all the major retailers in Southern Ontario. Products like Little Debbie cakes. There was a group of us that brought Little Debbie cakes into Canada, and I distributed pies and fudge and donuts and all sorts of, as people would say, from your lips to your hips is what I used to distribute. And as far as the idea of the business and whatnot, I did it. And one of my goals, one of my objectives, sounds kind of silly, but there was a car I really wanted to buy. It was called the Eddie Bauer Ford Explorer. And it was this two-tone Eddie Bauer. It had these chrome rims with a big moon roof. It was, I loved it. And the one I loved was black and tan. Had tan along the bottom and over the wheel wells. And I saw this thing, was love at first sight. I was like, I love that car. So I thought, but I thought it was too much money. I thought, there's no way. I'm busy making truck payments on my business. But what I did do, not even realizing it, I programmed my subconscious. So there used to be one on a street in St. Catharines I would see all the time, and I'd pull over and I'd look at it. And I don't know why, but I was just admiring it. I loved it. And I brought my camera one day and I took pictures of it. And I would just, some days, before I checked my emails, I would look at the pictures. I would just look at them. And I imagined driving it and not even realizing I was sending a message out to the universe, that I was programming myself. So now, and the other thing at the same time, my wife and I would ride our bikes with our kids, and we would have a path, and we stopped at this one house in a really nice neighborhood. And I just loved this house. Something about this house I loved. And I said, with some TLC, that is such a neat house. I loved it. It wasn't that it was anything out of this world, but it was a really nice house in a really nice neighborhood. But it was a real typical, nice kind of, I loved it. And so anyway, I said, oh, geez. So we would stop our ride. We'd always stop there for just a couple minutes, look at it, and then we'd continue our ride. So I'm jumping ahead now as I'm moving from one house to the next, and I'm going through stuff. And for anyone that's ever moved, it's just such a pain. You realize how much stuff you accumulate. I'm going through some photos, and I think, oh my God, I had already owned and sold that Eddie Bauer Ford Explorer, black and tan. I had it for a number of years, and I'd already sold it, and I was already on to my next vehicle. And I was moving into that dream house that I always wanted to be in, and I didn't even realize. So some people, there's a video out there called The Secret, and they'll make a dream board, and they'll create all the things in their life, whether it's white picket fence, 2.5 kids, a dog, a cot, whatever it is that turns your crank. And it's amazing when you think about it, because what you think about will come about. And when you focus on your why, and you back it up, and you have emotional links to it and anchors, it'll blow you away when you look back on your life and you realize, oh my gosh, I achieved the goals I set. I can't believe it, even if they seem unachievable. And that, I guess, would be one of the many lessons that I learn and continue to learn. Sometimes I have to remind myself, because sometimes you get beat down into submission and you realize, oh, hold on, what am I doing? And and you got to advise yourself. That's when you need friends around you that are going to lift you up and remind you, what's your why? Why are you doing this again? And then and then you're like, oh yeah, and then you're back again. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I'm a little loquacious at times.
Great.
Verbal diarrhea, I've been told. Yeah.
What I was thinking is also about your morning routine, because you talked about the situation where you like switching stuff up, right? Maybe sometimes you're working really late and then you get to sleep very late. But do you have a morning routine?
I do. It's funny, and I do have, for someone that preaches changing things up, I am pretty regimented in many ways in my life, because when you find something that works, you think, all right, well, why, if it's not broke, but having said that, yeah, I do have certain routines, and they're not necessarily just morning, but a few things that I do throughout my life and throughout my days. One is I work out every second day, and I usually do it during my lunch hour. So rather than having a sit down, because, in this job, as the mayor and in the mayor of Niagara Falls, there's a lot of people here from all over the world, and they always want to meet over lunch or over dinner. And in the beginning, I would do that, and I noticed my suits were getting tight, and I was putting on some beef, and I didn't like that. And I realized, no, I'm not going to do this. So we can meet, but why do we have to eat? We don't need to eat. So what I do is I work out, and then after my workout, then I'll have a hard-boiled egg and a cereal bar and maybe some seeds or sunflower seeds or a protein shake or whatever. I always have a good breakfast, and the first thing I love to do in the morning, so I get up, I stretch. That's the first thing I do, is I stretch and I breathe. Sometimes you have to remind yourself to breathe deeply, because we do it unconsciously, but you need to breathe deeply sometimes to really clean out your lungs and, of course, purify your body. And I start my day every day off with an invocation. I read something positive. So I've got a little book, and they're just very brief. They're daily messages. I was away in Ottawa. I took pictures of all the daily messages so I could read them every morning, because I didn't want to bring the book with me. I keep the book in my bedroom, and I read it every day. And I do that to get my head focused, get my head in the right place. I don't start reading emails right away, because I don't start watching the news, because that's negative. Mm-hmm. News is very, very negative. And that's how they sell. What do they sell? It's blood is what sells, right? So in media. So I read something positive. I like to listen to something positive. So I follow on Instagram and Facebook a lot of positive, motivational type people, a lot of them. And I'll just read or listen. And they're brief, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I get my head going the right direction. And then I go down and have my coffee. I love my morning coffee. That is my ultimate favorite. I love the smell of it almost more than the taste of it. And I sit there and I just quickly skim the newspaper. So I have a Globe Mail come in the morning and I skim through it. And I don't read in depth the negative things. I'm always looking for innovative, creative, fun, positive things. I don't want to be oblivious to the negative things that's going on in the world. And I still want to be aware of what's happening with blockchain technology and all the different technologies that are going on. But I'm seeking out good stories and positive things. And one of the things I do when I read our local paper, when I find somebody, I try to catch people doing things right. I'll cut something out of the paper, I'll find it on social media, I'll send them a handwritten card. I'm old school like that. I don't send them an email. I send them a handwritten card. And I'll tell you, you want an impact? One of my mentors, and I've got many, I asked one of them, who's a huge, successful telecom person in the U.S. And I said, Mike, I said, sum it up for me. Give me all the advice. And I remember him telling me before he could afford it, he spent $100,000 in 1 year on self-development seminars. He went to see every one of them, read every book, did all those types of things. And today he's worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. And he said to me, all right, well, I guess if I summed it up, I'd watch what everybody else was doing and I would probably do the opposite. He said pretty much all the time. Because people take comfort when they're in a herd. And even though that herd could be a bunch of lemmings going off a cliff, but they take comfort in knowing it's what everybody else is doing. And he said, I wouldn't take comfort. I'd be concerned if I was doing what everybody else was doing. So if you're a little bit of a person who likes to do things a little bit different, don't be afraid of that. Welcome that, embrace that. And another little bit of advice that, again, I received along the way, and one day I should write it all down because I've received some incredible advice, but I'm glad that you asked.
Yeah, for sure. Just quickly speaking on how you're influenced by various mediums, podcasts, books, what sort of, it could be movies, books, art forms, what or who do you turn to for inspiration?
Well, one who I really like a lot of the time too. Now, I don't push religion so much as I push spirituality, because spirituality crosses all religions. And I believe we're all connected. I believe, and again, you can call it energy if you want to call it, whatever you want to call it. I call it God, but everybody can call it whatever they want to call it. But I believe, I like to listen to Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen on Sirius Radio is 128. And it's funny, he just has a way. He doesn't say, Luke this, this. He just tells stories with great lessons. And I love that. And he does it in a playful way. And I love self-deprecating humor. Because again, it shows your ego's in check when you can make fun of yourself. And I typically make fun of myself before you have a chance to, so I get ahead of you. So if you're thinking something's goofy about me, I'll point it out first. So I love to listen to Joel Osteen, and I've been to almost every motivational speaker out there, and I'm constantly looking at new ones. Jack Canfield is coming to Toronto in a couple of weeks. I'm considering going to see him. I read a book, Dying to Be Me, by Anita Moorjani. Really neat story about this Indian lady who was to be married in an arranged marriage, and she tells her whole story of she ended up getting cancer, and tells her story about how she ended up I'll just say crossing over and coming back completely healed. I got to meet this lady. I wrote her a letter. I was moved by your book. It gave me a whole new perspective on death and life after this life. And it was so interesting, but I'm curious like a child about everything. And I would drive my wife crazy when we would drive somewhere. I'd be distracted. Like, she's like, you got ADHD. And I'd say, yeah, I know. Shiny object. I was like a dog seeing a squirrel. And because to me, that is what excites me when I see just something neat. And I like to stop. And today, coming here to this interview, I'm driving, and I write down by the OPG, Ontario Power Generating Lands. I see this beautiful coyote, beautiful. And I'm on the phone, my Bluetooth, speaking to a solicitor in town. And I said, hold on a second. And I had to turn the car around and go back and try to catch a picture of this gorgeous coyote. And I thought that was like a gift from the universe that to make my day more interesting. Out in broad daylight, the middle of this field, it was spectacular. And I just thought, oh my God. And that's one of the things I learned from being sick last year. I'm grateful for the little things that most people take for granted. And we like to complain. We call them first world problems when we complain because somebody drank all the milk that was in the fridge, or there wasn't enough gas in the car, or why didn't you take the garbage out? Because our house, we like to play garbage Jenga. We just keep piling it on top to see how far we can go because no one wants to take it out. And I would complain about these silly little things that actually have no place in life. And I realize how blessed and fortunate we are. There's food in my fridge. My roof doesn't leak. My car started this morning. I'm already better than 90% of the world before I even get going. And then you go a little further. I'm educated. I've got this. I got my health. And you realize, no, you're better than 99.9% of the world. And you realize you don't have anything to complain about. Because at one point I couldn't eat. I couldn't digest. I couldn't sleep. I didn't have the energy to do anything. I was so sick. I'd lost 50 pounds. Every hair in my body fell out, and the chemo just beats the heck out of you. But now, not that I ever looked forward to cutting the grass, but now I do because I can. I love to do things because I can. I want to help somebody do something because I can. And sometimes, unfortunately, you need to lose something to really appreciate how blessed you are to have it. You don't think about your air conditioner till it breaks. You don't think about your car that got you here until it won't start one day. And you don't think about these things till you lose them. And sometimes it's all about perspective in life. You just need to be reminded. So I got my wake-up call, and I've always been positive and optimistic, and that's just my nature, but I'm even more so. So when I catch somebody complaining, I'm not going to be the righteous person to, stop your complaint. I just try to gently nudge you. So when you come to me and say, oh, it's raining, and I'll say, yeah, I know, but you know what? My lawn really needed it. And then it's amazing. They go, yeah, no, I guess you're right. Or you say, well, the farmers, they're really waiting for whatever it does. I don't care what I try to gently spin you just a little bit, 1 degree, turn you 1 degree the other way and try to get you in a 1 degree will make your trajectory be in a very different place. So sometimes you just want to leave a place a little better than when you got there.
Yeah, actually, Robert Greene, who wrote one of the books he wrote was Mastery. He's actually someone who the previous writer we talked about, Ryan Hawley, apprenticed under. He went through a similar experience. He had a stroke and had to relearn everything. And he said, though he would never wish that upon anyone, it allowed him to appreciate the little things in life, like to be able to walk again and to be able to do that. So for sure, I totally see where you're coming from when you're talking about appreciating the small things.
Can I just say there are lessons to be learned if you're willing to learn them. And you have to be open, coachable, and teachable. And that means putting your ego in your back pocket and being a sponge to life. And if you're willing to do that, and I felt the same way. I had a friend who had breast cancer, and she wrote a book and whatnot. And Elena, I'm going blank right now for some reason. I don't know. This is terrible. I'll think of it in a second. But Elena wrote this great book, and she said, when this is over, you'll never wish it didn't happen. And sometimes, you need something like, so one of my mentors said to me before, Elena Somerville, that came to me. And one of my mentors said to me, in life, when something happens, just call it, I won't say bad thing because it's all relative. When something happens, instead of asking why this happened to me, ask what am I supposed to learn from it? And you will change your attitude to everything that happens in your eyes shitty in your life. So I'm not sure if we're allowed to say words like that on this podcast,
sure. Yeah.
But if things that don't go the way you want, just have a different approach and just say, what am I supposed to learn from this? All of a sudden, all these negative things won't be obstacles, they'll be learning points, there'll be lessons, there'll be steps for you to step higher up, there'll be benefits. They won't be bad things. Nothing is bad. It's all a lesson. Even if you step backwards, as long as you keep moving the ball forward.
Exactly.
Sure. And maybe we'll link Elena's book to the description of this video.
Definitely. And would you say that everything happens for a reason kind of thing?
Absolutely, everything happens for a reason. And there's meaning in every part of your day, from the little caterpillar that's, maybe that's to remind you, like what an amazing thing what the caterpillar calls the end of life, a we call a butterfly. I mean, what amazing. So, or you could just see this bug eating your plant. You could see it. You can see it. The cup is half empty. You could see the cup is half full. It's all a matter of your perspective and your attitude. So some people I find are, as I say, they just major in the minors. They just love to dwell in the, oh, woe is me area. And I just don't. And again, I don't want to judge because I don't want to be judgmental. but I get where they're coming from. One of the ways one of my mentors said to me before, and I have so many good mentors, when you want to win an argument, okay, I'm going to leave you guys with a little bit of advice here. So for all your listeners, and you're in an argument, or a debate, call what you want, or a discussion, and you want to win, and you want to be successful, the best way to win is to say you're right. You're probably right. And it's funny, now I told both you guys, so later on when you have a disagreement, you're not going to be able to use this, because then, Igor is going to say, Ryan, you're probably right. And Ryan's going to say, no, Igor, you're right. Yeah. And then it's going to turn into an argument about who's right. Yeah. But I will tell you this, try it. And it's amazing. So if you start to use these subtle things, and you can play with people in a nice way till it becomes habitual and it becomes unconscious. There's the 4 stages of learning, right? There's unconscious incompetence, when you don't know what you don't know. And then you become consciously incompetent. You realize, you become aware of what you don't know. And then you become consciously competent, where you're aware that you know your stuff. You know what you're talking about. And then you're at a point of unconscious competence, where you don't even realize, because you don't even think about it anymore. You compliment people, you catch people doing things right, you tell people they're probably right. You want to see someone drop their guard when they want to debate with you? Tell them they're right. Oh my gosh, they're looking for a fight, you won't give it to them. You're taking the judo approach. I'm going to use your own strength against you. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight cancer. I'm just going to go with you. I'm not going to stop the wind. I'm just going to adjust my sail. So anyway, another little tip for all your readers for tuning into this podcast, with Igor and Ryan, is tell people they're probably right, and you'll have some fun with it. I love playing those little fun things.
That's great tip. Well, we got a bunch of great tips this time, so thank you for that.
Yeah, we really want to thank you for taking the time to come and speak to us. I think we learned a lot, and similar, one of the reasons why I had you on here is a few years back when I was in university, I had you come in to speak to some of the teaching candidates about leadership and about perseverance, and they came to me after saying, oh wow, I took so many tools away from this speech, and I wanted to, I think a lot of the lessons that you speak about relate a lot to what we talk about on this podcast, so we appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to us.
And kind of like you said, like you go through the day and you talk to people and you want to get their story, what you can learn, save your experience, like all these years of kind of figuring out for yourself, and maybe in a much more painful way. That's kind of exactly what we're going for with this podcast too. And you've helped like everyone who watches this avoid, I think, many years of like difficult experience.
I always say you can make all the mistakes and learn all the lessons the hard way, or I could tell you the path is just over here.
Exactly.
So I think, why wouldn't you ask for the path? But again, maybe that's part of their learning. They've got to go down the wrong path for a while, and with all the thorns and prickers and wild coyotes, until they realize there's a better way. So it's great. But like they say, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And when people are ready to grow, you're here, and we're all here, and we're here to help them. And the key is, don't do it with an expectation of something in return. Just do it because it's the right thing to do, and you'll get rewarded by the universe for your generosity. So I appreciate what you're doing today. I know somebody's going to benefit from it, and it was all worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. And thanks everyone for listening to this episode with the Mayor of Niagara Falls. And until next time, take care.